At the beginning of every gacha game, you're given a number of free characters to actually start off your journey, but a lot of the time, these characters are only going to be used for a little bit, because once you get any other characters, they are pretty much not worth using anymore. But this is not the case in Etheria Restart, and in Etheria Restart, you do actually get a few free characters at the beginning, but the one I want to focus on today is Lian. Because of the free characters, she's the only one that is an SSR, and she is an incredibly good character for the early and mid game, which makes her very valuable for a lot of players to invest in her. So today, I want to give a spotlight on Lian herself, going over her kit, talking about why I think she is super valuable for players, especially for players who are just starting the game and are trying to, progress through the early and mid game. She could be a very strong DPS character. And all of my thoughts here are going to be based on my experience in the final test for Etheria Restart. So if there are things that are tweaked or changed with the official release, then we'll cover that as it comes. But all of this is going to be based on my own personal experiences. And even before I talk about the kit, I think one of the best things that they did for Lian as well is that there are actually missions in game tied around progressing through the game with her, such as leveling her up, ascending her, beating certain bosses with her on the team. So she is a very good character, not just for everything I'm going to list here, but the game actually does push you through the progression system at a pretty reasonable pace through building up Lian. So it is important for players to build her up as well to get those extra resources from those missions. So to start out with her kit here, Lian is a reason character, so she is the red element, and she is a fire, using character. So in her kit, she does have a passive as part of her skill 1. Her passive is the Ninefold Flame. For this passive, she gets a 6% damage bonus for each type of buff she has, and this could stack up to 5 times, meaning that if you have 5 different types of buffs on her, she'll have a 30% damage bonus across her entire kit, which is really nice. Now for her skill 1, it's a single target hit that does 3 hits of damage, and 50% of the damage you deal will actually be recovered to Lian, so you do have some extra lifesteal there as well, which is pretty nice for a DPS to be able to have some form of sustaining themselves as well. Then for her skill 2, this has a cooldown of 3 turns. It's going to deal 4 hits to random enemies, so each of these hits, they have a random chance of going to an enemy, and anytime Lian has buffs, you're going to deal an additional hit of damage, and this can max out at 3 times. So in total, you could have 7 random enemy hits for the skill 2, which is going to be some pretty solid damage as well. But if an enemy is hit multiple times within the same use of this skill 2, then the amount of damage they're dealt by subsequent hits will decrease by 20%, and this can go up to a 60% damage decrease. So this skill is probably going to be best to use against a lot of enemies, so you can get a good amount of damage in a few different spots, as opposed to more of like single target kind of situations. But if you do have her built up enough, you will still deal pretty solid damage even if you are fighting just one enemy, because there are going to be PvE parts of the game where you are only fighting one enemy. So it is still a good thing to have there. And the fact that her kit with her Ninefold Flame passive already revolves around getting a lot of buffs, a lot of the time you should be having the maximum amount of hits on this being 7, so you should still get some good damage all around from the skill 2. And then the last part of her kit is her skill 3, otherwise known as her ultimate. This has a cooldown of 4 turns, it's going to deal AoE damage, and it has an 80% chance to steal 30% of the turn meter of the targets. Now, stealing turn meter basically means that you're going to not only decrease their sort of action value on the action meter, but you're also going to increase your own as well, which is a very nice kind of, buff for a DPS, because it is going to allow you to take your action just a little bit faster after your ultimate, because you are going to want to use skill 3 pretty much whenever you can, especially in AoE situations, because it is going to be a very solid chunk of damage. So that is Lian's kit there. It is pretty straightforward too, which I think is good. But now let's talk about why I think that she is a very valuable character. So firstly, I think that the fact that she is a free SSR is very important. She is available extremely early in the game, very early in the story, and she can get you through the early and mid game extremely well. And like I mentioned before with the missions that they have her, give you extra rewards by building her up, by taking her into certain boss fights. and all that stuff, you know, upgrading every part of her, whether it be like her shell, her modules, her, you know, character level, that kind of stuff. It is very good to sort of teach you the progression of the game as you are still a new player, because I feel like I would rather make mistakes in terms of like building on a free character like Lian, rather than if there's like a really cool limited character or like, you know, featured character, because there aren't any limited characters in Etheria Restart, that comes out maybe like a couple months down the line. I'd rather have made the mistakes day one with this free DPS than on a character I really do enjoy and really want to build, you know, as perfectly as I can. So allowing players to go through the motions with a character while also giving them some extra resources on top of that with the missions is a very good thing. And since the game is pretty generous when it comes to giving pulls, at least based on the beta, I do think that it is going to be very good to have Lian there as a way to build a character, and then you build up pulls to pull for who you want. I also think it's really good that Lian also pairs with pretty much any kind of buffer, but she is going to really want characters that can provide a lot of different types of buffs, not just like one or two, because you do want to try to max out the passive she has to get the extra damage increase, because having that damage increase is going to be really good for her kit for her to do a lot of damage. It's especially going to be more important when you get to the mid game and onwards from there, so it is going to be good to have that kind of damage bonus. And I also think it's very valuable that her kit is simple, because she is the sort of beginner SSR DPS character. And I think that with a simple kit, without any too like complex mechanics or anything too crazy, I think that's great for players to learn like the basic mechanics of the game. She does have some, you know, cool things in her kit, like she has life steal as part of skill 1, she has turn meter stealing in her ultimate, so there are some really cool things in her kit, but it's not bloated to the point where a player should be getting overly confused, which is very important for the beginning of a gacha game, and then they kind of work their way up as they play the game more, as players get more information about the game and increase their game knowledge. So that is really everything I want to talk about for Lian. I think she's absolutely worth building. Now, if you are a player who has played the betas, has a very strong grip on the game, I can 100% see people not building Lian like as readily because they have tested other characters and know exactly what they want to do, which if that's you, by all means go ahead, because if you have the game knowledge already, then there's no reason to force yourself to use Lian if there's other characters that you know you really want to use and you know you can get their either the best situations or a good, you know, team comp for them. But I think for the majority of players, especially for people who either didn't get to put much time into the game through the beta or have not played the beta and are going to be playing for the official release, I think building Lian is such a good use of your resources to be able to learn the game at a pretty decent pace as well, and just overall have a very strong character to get you through a lot of the early and mid phases. So that's everything I have for Lian. I'd love to hear what you all think in the comments down below, but I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed and want to see more content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that, everyone, I will see you all next time.